Good evening. I am Xavier Salomon, the Peter J. Sharp Chief Curator at the Frick Collection, and welcome to this episode of Frick 5. Today I'm here with my colleague and friend, Aimee Ng, Curator at the Frick Collection. So we're going to start asking each other questions for a couple of the next episodes. So welcome, Aimee.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, and we're going to discover lots of things about each other doing this. So let's just jump straight into it. And what is the work of art or the place that changed your life?
Okay. Well, as you know, I didn't start off as an art history student. So I was a studio major. I was a painting major in university. And I have to admit that I had a little bit of a judgment issue. I actually wasn't really into art historians as a type. And probably quite unfairly, what I perceived to be these like legions of very well-dressed young women with laptops and libraries was like diametrically opposed to who I was then. You can psychoanalyze because where I ended up. But I did have to take art history classes as part of my degree, and I really liked them. And it came to my third year and I had to start making like a proper body of work in painting. And the first thing that I made was a full-size copy version of Manet's Olympia. And this is a painting that I met in my art history classes, and I changed a number of details here and there, engaging in sort of the issues inherent in a painting of a nude woman on a bed attended by a black servant in 19th century France. And it sort of became clear that I was exploring art history and discovering art history through making art. And with this painting and with the subsequent paintings in this series. So I should say that I didn't grow up with art history. So my family didn't go to Europe when I was a kid. We didn't go to museums very often. Like many immigrant families, not all of them, but like many, we had other concerns. And so, art history was not a big part of my life growing up, but art was. And the fact that I travel so much now and go to Europe so much now, and the fact that my mother, since retiring, has like gone to every single artistically significant city in the world since her kids left the house, is a far cry from how I grew up. So the first time I saw Manet's Olympia was actually the first trip that I took with my mom to Europe. She took me there on a sort of anticipating my graduation from university. And I remember standing there in front of Manet's Olympia at the Musée d'Orsay, and I was enthralled. This was a painting that I knew stroke by stroke, having studied it in high resolution images to make my version. And by then I'd already sent out some applications for graduate school to art history programs because I was interested. But I don't mean to romanticize it, but I remember standing there and having this moment of realization that I loved making art, and I was pretty good. I was a pretty good painter. But there was something about the history of these objects and their stories, their politics, their, the rage that they can inspire, even, the moving that they can do to people all over the place through centuries and different geographies, reaching me in the suburbs of Toronto, that kind of thing, that really solidified my interest in investing in art history. And the small coda to this story is I was getting back from this trip to Paris with my mother. And I got back to my apartment and I had several missed calls and voicemails, picked up voicemails on a landline back then. And the voicemails were from an increasingly annoyed with every missed call, David Friedberg, who was calling to offer me a spot in the PhD program in art history at Columbia. I took the spot, and fast forward to now doing this Frick 5 interview with you. So Manet's Olympia was right there as that turning point in my life.
Well, it's a pretty great painting to have, is that? Yeah. That's great. So if you had to live with a work of art,
yes,
with that, I assume that wouldn't be Manet's Olympia. But
no, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be something that I would just walk by and look at. Maybe it's an unorthodox choice, but it would be the bust of Queen Nefertiti, now at the Neues Museum in Berlin. This is not a work without problems. So this is a work that has been alleged as a fake in the last decades, something that was created in 1912 when it was purportedly discovered. I don't know if that's true or not. That's an ongoing debate. And it's also something that Egypt is calling for a repatriation out of Germany back to Egypt. So neither of those problems would be solved by me taking this into my home. But
or maybe both of them will be solved. that would be the solution.
Let's all get along. Yeah. I'll just take this out of the equation. It was, this is a work that I first met when I went to the Neues Museum and the newly renovated galleries. And seeing this little bust in this glass box in this fantastic sort of restored, post-war restoration building, this thing had so much power, like the aura of this object, but not in a loud way. This really cool, calm, commanding presence. And, fine, let's talk about authenticity another time. Fine, let's talk about repatriation another time. But this is something that I'd want in my home. And if I could have this, I'd also have my dream home. I'd have a gallery like this in my home. And it's something that, in the morning, if I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling a little insecure, I would walk in, I'd have a strong cup of coffee, and I'd get a zonk from Queen Nefertiti, and I'd walk out of my apartment feeling just, holding my head up a little bit higher, a little bit more inspired by her sort of feminine power.
We'll have to ask David Chipperfield to work on your apartment.
That's right.
I mean, I agree. This is one of the most...
bedroom into a 4-bedroom.
It's one of the most extraordinary museum spaces created in the last, couple of decades, I would say. It's
absolutely
a really amazing thing.
And what's great about it is because this object is in a glass box, it's kind of impossible to photograph on your own. So when you're in there, yes, there are people in there, but you can't really be concentrating on getting a perfect shot. Like it's not about that posterity of the image. It really is about looking at it there. So that's also another thing about being in its presence.
And I think it's also the only room at the Neues Museum where they don't allow you to photograph. They put that rule, I think, at one point, so that it is about this contemplation, yes. Unlike the Mona Lisa or something like that, which becomes this like selfie image. I mean, this could easily become that sort of thing. Instead, it's really about contemplation and living this incredible space with this incredible object. And it's,
absolutely.
I look forward to coming to your place and like looking at
canapes and champagne.
I'm just going to drink tea while looking at Nefertiti. So still in the realm of art, but in a different way, sort of away from visual arts. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a book and piece of music that inspired you.
Sure. Okay. So the book would be Robertson Davies' Fifth Business. And I have both on the left, the original cover of 1970, and then on the right, sort of, any number of covers that have been put on this book since then. Just to say that if I had encountered this book with its original cover, I would never have read it. I get why they chose it, but it's so off-putting to me in terms of how the story actually takes place that I probably, and maybe I'm just a very shallow person, I would not have opened that book. So just to say that the book's cover does have a lot to do with, as we know, never judge a book by its cover, but I did.
I think art historians do. We're visual people. We always judge books by the covers. And I
spend a lot of time choosing the right cover for a book.
We choose them, and also I don't like reading books with ugly covers. I think it's
that's right.
They need to have nice covers.
So Robertson Davies is a well-known Canadian author. And, I'm not just touting Canadian authors, being a Canadian myself. This is the first of a trilogy, the Deptford trilogy, but that doesn't really matter. This book is really the important thing. It doesn't really matter what the story is. It's about this kid who grows up in the Canadian, a small town in Canada, and a split-second event in his childhood changes the course of the rest of his life. And it doesn't really, he goes all over the world. It doesn't really matter what that is. You should read it. If you haven't read it, you should read it. But it's sort of this incredible mastery of storytelling, how it's woven and how you get back to the beginning. So you can really get lost in this book. But what really has stayed with me since I read this decades ago, and I honestly think about this book on a maybe weekly basis because of the central theme and idea, fifth business. And Robertson Davies said, in Greek tragedies, Greek drama, there is this thing of fifth business. It's not the hero, not the heroine, not the confidant, not the villain. There's this fifth other person who is integral to moving the plot forward. but they never get resolved. They just kind of go away. They disappear. And in my life, I've seen this sort of archetype of scenarios like, in this little conflict, who's fifth business? Who's going to go away and never be resolved? And something, I wonder, am I fifth business here? Am I just moving this forward and then I'm going to be, sent off to pasture? So it's been with me, this sort of, and that's really typical of the kind of resonating storytelling that happens in this book. So if viewers of this haven't read it, most kids in Canada have read this book.
Is it something you read at school in Canada? Or?
It is in some schools. I was never assigned it, so I had to come across it on my own, but it is generally, Robertson Davies is a generally assigned author in Canada.
And so for music, you've chosen something quite different.
So, Xavier, I'm a very simple person. I'm a very basic person. The piece of music that inspires me the most is Amazing Grace. And the reason it inspires me is, it started off as a Christian hymn, but it's like one of the best known, let's call it popular folk songs in America. Right. And to some degree that the wide popularity has sort of secularized it a little bit. So, it's not contained to or limited to only people who are Christian, for sure not. But what I love about this song is you can hear it in a drugstore, you can hear it at Christmas in the mall, and it won't mean anything. But in moments that you do, a moment of struggle, a moment of loss, a moment of people really needing to get together, somebody plays this or sings this song and it really can move you. Like, who could have kept a dry eye when President Obama sang this song at the funeral of the Charleston church shootings? Or even earlier this year, I don't know if you saw when Andrea Bocelli sang this at the empty Duomo, right in front of the empty Duomo, this Italian opera singer singing this folk American song. It was so moving. I played this song at my grandfather's funeral when I was 13. Like, it just has this sort of way to reach people. And what's so strange about it, its words were composed sepapply from its music. So the words actually were composed in the 18th century, in the 1770s, by John Newton, who was active in the slave trade. And he becomes a curate, publishes a number of hymns. We don't know what music he had set it to, or if he had set it to music at all. It wasn't until the 19th century, in the 1830s, that an American called William Walker set Newton's words to an already popular sort of authorless tune called New Britain. And that's the sheet here. This is a sheet in the Library of Congress. And New Britain has no author, and it seems to come from like two previously existing tunes that are sort of merged together. But it was a sort of magical moment of putting together Newton's words with this sort of folk inherited tune. That suddenly became hugely popular in America. And to me, that in itself is sort of emblematic of the power of this song.
I love it when that happens, when words are put to music at a different point, but they become these iconic pieces of music. So I think in England, in the United Kingdom, it's a very similar thing with Jerusalem, which is a William Blake poem that's then put to music later on. And it becomes a sort of hymn again that, I played it at my grandmother's funeral. Right. And it's sort of like, it's the sort of, and I always love that piece of music exactly for that reason. It's such a sort of strange combination of things. So not to move too much into negative territory, but let's talk about artists who are overrated and then pick up again with someone who's underrated. So who's the most overrated artist as far as you're concerned?
So as a Canadian, I do not like to offend anybody, as you know. And so I'm already going to apologize to anybody who will not like this answer. And I also want to have the caveat that when we say overrated, we don't mean that this is a bad artist. He never did anything good. The artist that I've chosen could paint, for sure. And he created some fabulous things. But I think that Frans Hals is overrated. And my apologies to our colleagues at the Frans Hals Museum. And I know that I've chosen some really unfair selections from...
I love Frans Hals. Poor Frans Hals.
I know you do. And of course, Frans Hals there are incredible works by Frans Hals, but he's often celebrated for sort of, making the focus of some of his portraits, people who are sort of lower down on the social ladder and, pub scenes and just, common life, that kind of thing. So there's these sort of endless images of red-faced drunk people at bars, which is, fine and everything. I guess what annoys me a little bit is that, especially in individuals who are, let's say, lower down in the social ladder in the 17th century, that there's a little bit of a lack of dignity to the way that they're portrayed. And if you're going to make somebody the subject of a portrait, then one would hope for a little bit of dignity. And you can name other artists who have painted pictures of people who are not particularly wealthy or particularly, you can think of Moroni's Tale or things like that, but there's dignity. And so with Hall's, it's just that the too much of a quickness of the stroke to capture that liveliness, but missing that, to me, that human component of treating some of his subjects with more dignity. But that's, he could paint.
Fair enough. No, point taken.
Okay.
So underrated artist, who would you like to see more of?
This is a little bit of probably an annoying response. I would say that Parmigianino is an underrated artist that I would hope to see receive a little bit more attention. And yes, the Frick has done 2 exhibitions already, 3 exhibitions.
3, I think it was 3.
On the art of Parmigianino. But each time, our general public had to be reintroduced to who this artist was. And very often it was, he was called the Raphael Reborn of his generation. And I think in Italy, it's a different story. In America, there is no portrait by Parmigianino in a public museum. And so to some degree, it's not something that most Americans grow up with. But not only is he incredible as a painter and should be better known in this country, especially, and here's the icon of the 16th century in terms of self-portraiture, the self-portrait in a convex mirror at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, but also in drawing. Over 1,000 sheets left. I mean, he was just this amazing, prolific, fantastic draftsman. But most importantly, I think, in the realm of printmaking. Like, he's among, if not the earliest Italian artists engaging in chiaroscuro woodcut, in etching. He's really, really, let's say, pioneering print media in Italy. And I think that's sort of not celebrated enough in terms of an artist that wasn't just doing one medium, that was all over the place. So Parmigianino. We need to do a huge exhibition on Parmigianino.
Everyone needs a huge Parmigianino exhibition. No, it's wonderful. But I think even in Italy, I mean, people often think of Correggio more as, but he is, you're right. I mean, he is an absolutely unbelievably beautiful artist. And,
and I'd take this one too, actually. I'd live with this one too.
That's a very good thing to live with. But I always think of you with Parmigianino because I think we first met when you were working on the Schiava Turca exhibition.
That's right,
so,
yes.
So this leads to the next question, because every time I think of you as a portrait, I tend to think of the Schiava Turca or maybe more recently Moroni. But so if you could be portrayed by someone, I'm assuming you haven't chosen Moroni and you haven't chosen Parmigianino.
That's right. No. I chose John Singer Sargent because that is sass. Yes. Those are like strong killer portraits, and they might have their scandals. Madame X was not the greatest success of his life publicly, but to him it was maybe the best thing that he produced. John Singer Sargent, he just brings out the greatest drama and seems to capture what I would like to think is like the essence of this person outside. With the caveat that, I don't know how Sargent would handle a face like mine. He didn't do Asian faces. There's no history of that, but he did do, I know that he painted portraits of an Egyptian woman, he labeled one, of course, Thomas McKellar. So, he was, it wasn't all just Caucasian faces for sure. What I would hope for is a full length explosion of a portrait like either Dr. Pozzi or Madame X. That's what I would want. As modest as I am.
Do you know the outfit you would wear? Have you decided on the outfit? Because that's an important aspect.
That's true. It would probably be like a very fitted black catsuit or something.
I am looking forward to seeing this portrait very much.
Thank you.
And then we can acquire it for the Frick.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Aimee. This has been great.
Thank you, Xavier.
And see you soon.
See you soon. See you at our next Zoom meeting.
See you at the next Zoom meeting. Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.